Hello and welcome to today's edition of the Daf Yomi, Menachot Daf 58 Amud 8. And I will ask, and what does Rabbi Yochanan, who maintains that the prohibition against bringing leftover portions up to the ramp applies to all the items listed in the Brisa, do with this term them in the verse? As an offering of first produce you may bring them, Leviticus 2:12, from which Rabbi Elazar learns that only first fruits and the 2 loaves, including the prohibition. The Gemara answers, it requires it for that which is taught in a Brisa. One might have thought that an individual may donate and bring to the temple a gift offering similar to those 2 loaves, but the community in support, I will read with regard to this offering that the verse that deals with other gift offerings. That which has gone out of your lips shall you observe and do, according to which you have vowed freely to the Lord your God, even that which you have promised with your mouth in Deuteronomy 23:24, which would mean that the offering is consecrated and you must bring it as he declared. Therefore, the verse states, as an offering of first produce you may bring. The phrase you may bring is written in the plural, meaning that it's addressed to the community. Therefore, interpreted to mean, I said to you that a community may consecrate and bring the 2 loaves, which are an offering of first produce, but an individual may not consecrate and bring 2 loaves of this nature. The Bible continues, one might have thought that only an individual may not bring 2 loaves as a gift offering, and the individual does not bring his obligatory offering in a manner similar to those 2 loaves, but perhaps specifically an individual who never has an obligatory offering of 2 loaves may not bring 2 loaves as a gift offering, but the community shall bring. Was for no Yehei Sibum may be. What he explained in the Gemara is suggesting that the community should be able to bring 2 loaves as a gift offering, funded from money donated and placed in the temple collection receptacles. Later commentators note that Rashi's explanation here is consistent with his opinion stated in Leviticus 1:2, that the community cannot bring a gift offering, and therefore he has to explain that the money of the collection receptacles will be utilized for this purpose. The Ramban in his commentary on Leviticus 1:2 disagrees with Rashi concerning this. That's been it, Zehu Mekom. 2 loaves as a gift offering, as the community does bring its obligatory offerings in a manner similar to the 2 loaves. Therefore, the verse states, you may bring them, to exclude the possibility of communal gift offerings of 2 loaves. The Bible concludes, and what is there left for you to bring as offerings that come from leaven and honey? The 2 loaves that come from leaven and the first fruits that come from honey are sweet fruits. The Gemara asks, may the 2 loaves not be sacrificed as communal gift offerings? But isn't it taught in a Bible with regard to the verse, as any leaven and any honey, you shall not burn any of it? Leviticus 2:11. If it is stated any leaven, why is it stated any honey? And if it's stated any honey, why is it stated any leaven? In other words, why necessary for the verse to repeat the term, exclusive term any, from which is derived that offering an insufficient quantity of honey or leaven is included in the prohibition? The Bible answers, both of these terms had to be stated because there is a halacha that applies to leaven that is not applicable to honey, and the halacha applicable. Another halacha that applies to honey that is not applicable to leaven. The Bible explains, in the case of leaven, although it may be sacrificed on the altars, general prohibition was permitted to certain circumstances in the temple, whereas the 2 loaves and the bread of the thanks offering, i.e. the 4 loaves and the thanks offering that were eaten by the priest or leavened bread. By contrast, with regard to honey, there are no circumstances in which its general prohibition was permitted in the temple. There's halacha that applies to honey but not to leaven, as the prohibition concerning honey is permitted in the case of the remainder of meal offerings. So what's the footnote? Called Davash any honey. The commentary is note that the honey mentioned here is not the honey of bees, but the honey of fruit. Rabbi Elazar of Metz. Although any commentaries add that this refers not only to the honey of dates, but also to the sweet juice of any fruit. Rashi on the terms of Rashbam. Some commentaries maintain that honey of bees is included in the prohibition, and that's from the Sefer Chinuch, see the Radbas. Meaning that the priests may eat their portion of meal offerings with honey, whereas the prohibition concerning leaven is not permitted in the case of the remainder meal offerings. Davash so ba'ayah rei menachos. The remainder of meal offerings, which is eaten by priests, may be consumed together with honey. It may not be eaten as leaven, in accordance with the ruling of the Brisa of Sefer Road, Hilchot Ma'aser Kabbalah 12:14. This one may not leaven this remainder. The Brisa summarizes, due to the fact that there is a halacha that applies to leaven and is not applicable to honey, and there's a halacha that is applicable to honey, applies to honey but is not applicable to leaven. It was necessary to state any leaven, and it was also necessary to state any honey. The Gemara analyzes the Braita. When the Braita states concerning leaven that its general prohibition was permitted in certain circumstances in the temple, what is this? Is this referring to the halacha that the meal offering on the 2 loaves may be sacrificed by the community as a gift offering on the altar, as the 2 loaves of the communal offering themselves were not sacrificed on the altar? This would mean that 2 loaves may be brought as a gift offering by the community, which contradicts his claim of the previous Braita. Rav Ammon. Who is Rav Ammon? The second generation Babylonian Rav Ammon was a student of Rav, whose statements he cites along with those of Shmuel and Rav Asi. Although it is stated that Rav Ammon was one of the great sages of his generation and the other sages who gathered around him, the Gemara provides few biographical details about his life. It said, no, the Braita is referring to the fact that the 2 loaves which were leavened are brought as an altar with the 2 lambs, which are brought up onto the altar as communal peace offerings. Since they are brought together, the 2 loaves and 2 lambs are considered one a single offering, and the lambs are sacrificed on the altar. The Gemara asks, but if so, in the case of first fruits alone, the fruits should be considered as part of the offering that was brought with them. As we learn in Mishnah Bakum 3:5, and for the fledglings, what does that mean? Gozolos. The fledgling mentioned here are the domestic pigeon, Columba livia domestica, and the dove, the European turtle dove, Cervipeda tortor, a migratory bird from the family Columbidae that can be found in shore during the spring and late summer. The Torah specifies that pigeons brought as offerings must be young, which indicates that by contrast, doves brought as offerings must be mature. The halacha is that at the age at which the dove is fit to be sacrificed, the pigeon is no longer fit, and throughout the period that the pigeon is fit, the dove is not yet fit. The Mishnah Tractate Chulin 22a stipulates the boundary age for both is the same, the stage of development at which certain feathers begin to take on specific colours around 4 or 5 days after hatching. And there's pictures here. We have the Gemara on page 40 shots of a turtle, dove, and pigeons. They were placed on top of the basket that contained the first fruits. Those who brought first fruits to the temple would also bring in the hands dove and pigeon fledglings fit to be sacrificed. Likewise, they would hang fledglings on the side of the baskets to decorate the first fruits. The fledglings that came with the baskets were sacrificed as burnt offerings, while the ones in their hands were given to the priest. Others maintain that they held the first fruits in their hands as arriving, and no fledgling was given directly to the priest, as the Roman says in the Menachot Daf 3:9. Brought to the temple, they were sacrificed these as burnt offerings, and the baskets themselves now in the possession. The commentators disagree as to the meaning of this clause, from which there are different versions. Some read the fledglings that were on the baskets were burnt offerings, and those in their hands were given to the priest. According to this version, the mission is referring only to the bird, not to the baskets. Those fledglings which were on the baskets are hanging on the side, so that they would not football the fruit. Have I ever said this? Would not spoil the fruit they brought of the other fledgling which was in the hands of those bringing the first fruits was simply given to the priest. Romans come to the mission, see Romans the Rhine, become 3:9 other read that and that which is in their hands are the first fruits which they brought by hand were given to the priest. The Bible and Rambam say for the Rhine 3:9. The version accepted by Rashi is, and the baskets that were in their possession, as these two were given to the priest. One second, where's the lost the place now? And those being the first fruits are given to the priest. Accordingly, with regard to honey as well, a general prohibition was permitted in certain circumstances, as these first fruits containing honey are included with the sacrifice of burnt offerings. The Gemara answers, these fledglings came only to decorate the first fruits, despite the fact that they were later sacrificed as burnt offerings. Bringing the fledglings is not obligatory, and therefore cannot be considered part of the same offering as first fruits. The Gemara continues to discuss the prohibition against bringing leftover parts of offerings up to the altar after the sacrificial parts have been burned. Rami bar Hama asked Rav Chisda, with regard to one who offers up on the altar some of the meat of a bird sacrificed as a sin offering. One who offers up the meat of a bird sin offering with leaven or honey, whether burning on the altar or placing on the lamp, is liable to receive lashes. Although this meat is not suitable for burning on the altar, it is nevertheless called an offering. In the verse, as an offering on the first fruits you may bring them, Leviticus 2:12, and therefore he is liable, as stated by Rav Chisda to Rav bar Hama in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. In Sefer Mizbeach 5:4, see the Lechem Mishnah there. Which is meant to be eaten by the priest. What is halacha? Is he liable to receive lashes for this action? The Gemara clarifies the possibility. The Mishnah states, with regard to any item that already had some portion of it burned in the fire on the altar, that one who sacrificed any leftover part of it violates the prohibition. And as no part of this bird sacrificed as a sin offering is burned in the fire on the altar, is he therefore exempt? Or perhaps any item that is called an offering is included in the prohibition, and since the bird is also called an offering, one is liable. Any item that is called an offering is included in this prohibition, and this bird sacrificed as a sin offering is also called an offering. The Gemara notes, Rami bar Hama's dilemma is subject to dispute between the Tanaim as it is taught in a Braita. And Eliezer says, only any item that has already had some portion of it burned in the fire on the altar is included in the prohibition. Do not burn. Rabbi Akiva says any item that is called an offering is included in this prohibition. The Gemara asks, what is the difference between the opinions of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer? Rav Chisda said the difference between them concerns this case discussed earlier, of one who brings some of the meat of a bird sin offering to the altar. Rabbi Akiva maintains that he is liable, as is called an offering, whereas Rabbi Eliezer holds that he is exempt as no portion of it is burnt on the altar. Rav said the difference between them concerns the log of oil that accompanies the guilt offering of a cold leper. As Levi teaches concerning the consecrated items given to the priest as gifts, the verse states, every offering of theirs shall be most holy for you and for your sons. Numbers 18:9. The phrase every offering serves to include the log of oil of a leper. This oil is not burned on the altar. Nevertheless, Rabbi Akiva would deem one who brings some of this log up to the altar liable, as it called an offering, whereas Rabbi Eliezer would deem him exempt. No part of it is burned in the fire. The Gemara returns to the discussion about the prohibition against sacrificing leaven. The sages taught in a Braita, when the Torah states with regard to leaven, do not burn it, see Leviticus 2:11, and advised only that one who burns all of it is liable, as will be explained. Where is it derived that one who burns only part of it is included in the prohibition? So, leaven part of it is prohibited to sacrifice any amount of leaven on the altar in accordance with the verse. 2:11, for any leaven and any honey you shall not burn. Bama Sefer Vod Hilchot Yisur Mizbeach 5:1. Those including prohibition. The verse states any cold leaven, which serves to include such a case. The Braita adds this halacha has been derived with regard to leaven in a pure state. From where is it derived that the same applies to one who sacrifices it in a mixed state? It is prohibited to sacrifice on the altar even a mixture containing leaven. If one burned on the altar a mixture containing leaven as an offering or together with an offering, he is liable to receive lashes. That's the Rambam Sefer Hilchot Mizbeach 5:1. I mixed any other substance. The verse states the additional expression as ki any leaven. The Gemara analyzes by so what is it saying? What is the meaning of the term all of it and the term part of it? And I said, this is what the Braita is saying. When the verse states about leaven, do not burn it, I have derived only that this prohibition applies to an olive bulk leaven. From where is it derived that this prohibition applies if it's only half an olive bulk? The verse states any leaven. Furthermore, from where is it derived that one is liable not only for leaven by itself, but also for leaven in its mixed state? The verse states as any leaven. Rabbi said that there's a different interpretation of the Braita. This is what the Braita is saying. When the verse states about leaven, do not burn it, I have derived only that this prohibition applies to the entire handful as removed from the meal offering. From where is it derived that this prohibition applies to half of the handful? The verse states any leaven. Furthermore, from where is it derived that one is liable not only for leaven by itself, but also for its mixed state? The verse states as any leaven. The Gemara asks, with regard to what principle do Abaye and Rabbi disagree? The Gemara answers, Abaye holds there is such an entity as a handful that is less than the volume of 2 olives. Thank you for listening, and all the best.